All right, all right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Mohit. I'm a developer advocate here at Salesforce, and I welcome you all to another episode of Ask Me Anything for the month of November. Now, we have an exciting panel today and an exciting topic very, very close to my heart. AI agents are changing how we actually build software applications, and Salesforce is no more immune to that. We are heavily invested in this area, and we have product experts today. But before we actually get into our experts here, I just want to remind you that this is Ask Me Anything. So please make use of the chats. Remember, no question is silly. So get all your questions. We have amazing panelists today. Use that chat, get in all your questions, and I'll make sure we'll cover as many questions as you want. But before we get started, there is some housekeeping here that we need to go through. So moving on to the slides. So first, of course, our favorite slide here at Salesforce, because we have project management, we have to put together this forward-looking slide. Just want to remind everyone, please make sure that you make your purchasing decisions based on features that are currently available. With that out of our way, I want to remind everyone that we are all connected through this amazing Salesforce developers global community. So there is this URL where you can go to this Trailblazer community. If you're new to Salesforce, welcome and join this community, because here you can network with everyone, and we can all learn together. So please share your learnings, your problems, and we'll all work together. We are all one here in this learning journey. And we have, of course, amazing panelists today. I just want to get to our panelists here. So starting with, I'll start with introductions. So how about we'll start with Jeff. Jeff, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Hey, I'm Jeff Douglas. I am the product manager for Agentforce Vibes.
Awesome, awesome. And next we have Vivek. Vivek, over to you.
Hi, folks. I'm Vivek M. Chawla, product manager for Agentforce DX Pro Code and Salesforce DX MCP, platform CLI. So a lot of the agentic backend stuff.
Awesome. Thank you, Vivek, and thank you, Jeff, as well, for joining. Finally, last but not least, John, very familiar face. John, welcome.
Hello, hello. Happy to be here and happy, by the way, to share the stage with these guys. These guys are awesome. So ask your question, right? Now, I lead our product space around the DX ALM tooling. That's DevOps Center, DevOps Testing, Code Analyzer, some products within the IC space for those of you that are partners, 1GP to 2GP, App Analytics, and also DX Inspector.
Awesome, awesome. I just want to remind everyone there is a lot of brain power here. So whether you use our Salesforce CLI and want to explore how we are moving in this space in this agentic era, or you use Agentforce Vibes, which is going to be the main topic today, bring in all your questions. Whatever problems you have had or experiences, please feel free to share. Get in all your questions today, and we'll keep moving. But I know that some of you have not got chance to work with Agentforce Vibes, and some of you would have explored it. So let's bring everyone on the same page here, so everyone has some context, some background around expertise of all these panelists, and also what we are working in this space. So I'll bring back the slides, and I will hand off to Jeff. These slides are going to run away very fast. This content is going to be only for a small duration, so stay around here and just note down all your questions. With that, I'll bring back the slides and hand over to you, Jeff, and we'll move on here with our next slide.
Okay, thanks, Mo. I appreciate it. I'm super excited to be here today talking to everyone about Agentforce Vibes. So in case you haven't heard, Agentforce Vibes is our new agentic developer experience specifically designed to supercharge developer productivity with Gen AI. So using natural language to code, developers can simply describe in plain English what they want to build, and Agentforce Vibes is going to generate that coded configuration that they can use to refine and then deploy directly. So now Agentforce Vibes delivers more than just snippets. It provides structured plans, function code, and automated test generation, all reviewed and approved by developers. Now, it understands your org's metadata, your schema, coding conventions, and through a combination of agentic discovery, deep planning, and coming soon, we have a new metadata tool that we're about to release. And speaking of MCP servers, Vivek, can you talk a little bit about the Salesforce DX MCP server that comes out of the box?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So one of the secret superpowers behind a lot of agentic tools these days is MCP, or Model Context Protocol. Salesforce DX MCP server ships with more than 60 tools that are all focused on developer experience, DX related outcomes. So these are tools for Lightning, mobile development, DevOps Center tools, even Code Analyzer. All of these are represented as DX MCP tools. Security is very important, and so we leverage the same authentication that you do when you use the CLI, but with DXMCP, because the agent's doing a lot of different things on your behalf, you may want to scope what orgs that the MCP tools can actually use, and so that you have this ability to have scope local auth, when you set up the configuration for your MCP server, and all of this goes into the fact that DXMCP server and the tools, they're very project aware, SFDX project aware. It's one of the advantages of using the tools and the DXMCP server to help agents get work done against Salesforce. And so we're constantly working on building more tools for this. And all of this is, like most of our developer tools, official open source software. It's ProdSec approved, and it works in Agentforce Vibes and other agentic hosts. And you can get more on NPM at Salesforce/MCP. Next slide. Back to you, Jeff.
Thanks. So how can you get started using Agentforce Vibes? So you can access it from a couple of ways. It's available to run locally on your machine using VS Code, Cursor, or Windsurf. Next slide, please. And there's also a browser-based version that's available in virtually every Salesforce sandbox org. It's pre-installed and ready to go, so you can get started today. The functionality is basically the same if you're using the local version or if you're using the web-based version. So with Agentforce Vibes, developers can move from natural language directly to working code. You can describe what you want to build. Maybe it's a trigger, an Apex handler, LWCs, or maybe tests, or maybe have to refactor some code. And Agentforce Vibes will create a plan for you, and it'll generate the code and all the supporting configurations that you need. Now, this works across a wide range of use cases. So you can use it from new greenfield projects, rapid prototyping, to new feature development in existing orgs, for debugging and refactoring and testing and even code quality. Next, please. Agentforce Vibes has two different modes, which is fantastic. The plan mode transforms how developers work with AI by adding structure, visibility, and control before any code is actually written. So like with other IDEs, instead of just like jumping in straight into code generation, this plan mode allows developers to work with Agentforce to maybe define requirements and implementation details, to discuss architecture and approaches, maybe even break down the plan to build things into actionable parts. And you can also ask the model, different questions, and it'll provide feedback and ask for more details on what you want to do. So it's kind of like having a planning session with a technical lead who kind of understands your project and your org. And next, please. And so once the plan is approved and you switch to act mode, Agentforce Vibes gets down to work creating and modifying the code, running CLI commands, invoking MCP tools, scanning for security violations, and ensuring best practices and compliance. And Agentforce Vibes is currently free to use, and it's powered by two models. We have a Pro model and a Core model with tiered usage. So currently our Pro model is GPT-5, and that comes with 50 requests per org per day, which is different from production orgs or sandbox orgs. Then after that, you get unlimited requests with our current coding model.
All right, and I assume that this one is on me, right?
Yes.
So imagine that you are building all of this amazing stuff, either using Agentforce Vibes or using our local builders or using the Pro tools that we have today. Regardless, ultimately, the solutions you're building, the apps you're building, they need to make their way to production, right? So with this in mind, at Dreamforce, we announced the next iteration of our set of low-code ALM tools, right? If you think back to like 15 years ago, we introduced like change sets, followed by our Pro Code CLI experience called Salesforce DX at the time. Later on, we introduced DevOps Center, DevOps testing earlier this year. But now what we are doing is effectively creating a new paradigm that will allow you, our developers, to start to move towards the agentic era. Now, let me explain how this actually works, right? First of all, in all of your sandboxes, you're going to have access to the X inspector, right? So this means that you are able to easily identify what has changed in the particular environment. And then you can do two things, right? You can take those changes, and those changes, by the way, can include metadata, data, and other stuff that we're going to be adding in the near future. You can deploy them directly to a target org, as you do today with change sets. So this is kind of the evolution of change sets. Or you can actually commit directly from your dev environment into DevOps Center. And DevOps Center itself is also evolving. I'll touch on that a little bit more in the next slide, but the important key thing here is that it is agentic, meaning that you can now use agents to fully operate DevOps Center end-to-end, and very shortly, you'll be able to do entire setup of DevOps Center, of pipelines and creating projects, creating work items, all of that stuff through agents. But DevOps Center is now moving to our core platform. That means it's a lot more faster, like 10 times faster than what we have ever had in terms of UI, in terms of actual deployment activities. The UI is fully extensible, and it's API first. And those APIs are wrapped by MCP tools that are available in our DX MCP server, meaning that Agentforce Vibes can now directly do all of those operations. Now, DevOps Center is available as a pilot. We will be sharing some resources on how you can nominate yourselves for this pilot, and we're very much looking forward to your feedback here. If we move on to the next slide, I wanted to quickly touch on what we're doing with Colonizer in this space as well. So Colonizer 5 was launched earlier this year. It was built from scratch to be agentic and to support agentic experiences, especially around quick fixes. But we now introduce our MCP tool, currently in developer preview, that effectively allows agents to request Colonizer scans on a series of files, get those results, use those results to come up with a plan on how to, say, refactor code or remove those anti-patterns that are there, and do that in bulk and in a way that is a lot faster than ever before. If you go to the next slide, you can easily install Colonizer across all of our key developer experiences. Through the CLI, it comes as default as part of our IDE extension pack, and Agentforce 5's IDE will already have it. We have a GitHub action as well. DevOps testing currently has Colonizer 5 as a test provider by default too. And of course, our DX MCP servers I mentioned earlier. So all of these experiences are available to you to use Colonizer 5 to scan your code for issues around security, around performance, around best practices, and ensure it adheres to the standards that you really want to drive. And that means that AI-generated code through Agentforce Vibes or any other means can be scanned and ensure that it is also driving those best practices. And that's it, I think, in terms of my slides.
Awesome. And thank you actually for keeping up with the time. I said 10 minutes and you were all like spot on that 10 minutes. So I hope this gave all of us, all of you, about expertise of our panelists and also areas that they manage in terms of product. And now it's your time to ask questions. And we already see a lot of amazing questions coming in from community for every one of you here. And actually, let's take one question from Sally. Sally, thanks for your question. It's coming from LinkedIn. Sally, thanks for joining. So the question is around, what are the best use cases where you recommend Agentforce Vibes? For example, I'm hesitant about using it for deployment because it might consume unnecessary API requests. What's your perspective on this? And I would like Vivek for you to answer as well, and then Jeff, I would like you to answer this as well.
I understand the concern about using too many API requests. I think one of the benefits of using like the Salesforce DX MCP server is that it'll cut down on unnecessary API requests. And I know sometimes when you're vibe coding, agents can make a small mistake about something, or try to deploy something and didn't work. But I kind of liken that to, I've made lots of mistakes myself when trying to deploy. I mean, every time if I'm working on an Apex class and I want to compile it, that compile is a deploy. So it's I understand where the concern is coming from, but I think that the value of being able to quickly do more, with the coding that you're building, outweighs maybe any risks of some extra API calls during development. Jeff, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I agree that. I mean, sometimes deployment is the only way to figure out if it actually is the scheme is created correctly, the scheme is right, the code's correct. To do that, one thing that I have talked to Vivek about is like deploying in different segments. To maybe deploy all your Apex first, or all your custom objects first, to make sure they deploy correctly instead of a one-shot deployment. There's different approaches to that, but I think still, deployment is kind of what you need to do to ensure that it was created the best schema that's going to be deployable.
Awesome. Cool. So this is a question coming in from one of our experts here who use this tool. They're just trying to understand what is deep planning. I know, Jeff, that you lately introduced this deep planning into the agentic IDE Agentforce vibes. So what is deep planning? Tell us more about it.
Sure. So deep planning is a mode that you want to use when you do things like some deep refactoring, some an existing code that has maybe a lot of integrations, that needs a lot of planning around it. Just think if you would actually go to an architect and talk about an approach for how you want to refactor something or build something, this is probably when you're going to want to use deep planning. So first thing it's going to do is it's going to start scanning through all your code. You can watch it, listing all your files, looking at all your directories, trying to develop those patterns that you have in your code. Maybe develop there's a dependency graph on how things are working. And then it's going to come back and ask you some specific questions based on your initial request and what it found in the files. And then based on that information you provide to Agentforce, it's actually going to go ahead and actually produce a detailed implementation plan. This could be like any plan you would go to do when you have a work item on how to refactor something. It'll have detailed steps, what's to be changed, what's going to be created, tests generation, what are the process to test things, security scanning, it's all going to be wrapped up in there. And then basically once you approve that plan, it's going to start a new task with that new plan in context so you can get going. So it's going to eat up a lot of more API calls, like as Sally was concerned about. But if you need to do some architectural planning, something that's deep down in your org, this is what you want to use for that.
Awesome. And Sally, I hope that answers your question around when to use, this deep planning.
Sally always has the best questions.
Yeah. Awesome. There is another question here. Can we give field level access or profile level access while creating a field from Agentforce vibes? I think that's what they meant. Like, can we give permissions or access while creating these fields?
Yes, basically, and almost anything that's available through the metadata API is possible. So one approach I like to take when I'm building stuff is actually, I think a best practice is to create a perm set and add everything to that perm set, deploy the perm set, and then apply my user to that perm set to give access. Mm-hmm. That's very simple. We've got a lot of demos showing that. That's probably the preferred route, and it's pretty easy to do, actually.
Awesome. And John, the next question is for you. What are the benefits of this next generation DevOps Center that you just talked about? What are some of the benefits that you see?
Performance is one of them, as I mentioned, right? It will also support everything that I was talking about earlier in terms of the capability we're adding to the DX Inspector, in terms of deploying not only metadata but also data between orgs, right? So that's going to come up. It's not available in the pilot yet, but that's going to come up earlier next year, right? So imagine you're able to deploy your metadata, then your configuration data. Maybe if you're deploying data cloud components, we're also going to hydrate data cloud for you, right? And other things that will come up in the future, right? We've been talking about, and this is something we discussed at Dreamforce, this idea that we are going to support React on the platform, right?
Right.
So being able to also ensure that React is correctly processed, we do the React builds if need be, we deploy things to the various environments in the pipeline and all of that stuff. Now, in addition to that, we are going to much more deeply integrate DevOps Center with our testing capabilities as well next year, right? So that means that at each stage of your pipeline, you're going to be able to run automated tests. That means Apex unit tests, flow tests, code analyzer, Agentforce Testing Center, partner tools, and implement quality gates so that you can also ensure that any changes meet those quality criteria, right?
Yeah.
The UI itself is extensible, and we're going to keep working on it. So we're looking forward to our feedback as part of the pilot.
Awesome, awesome. I really like this that, there is this vibing which these agents are doing and creating code artifacts, but we still have to have that guardrails in place so that, of course, building software, I think the most important thing is to, make sure that the software works and scales and is secure. And I love the investment that we are doing in that space as well. Like, make sure that this pipeline of DevOps is still kept intact. And I think I just want to stress this out to our developers, right? Just because you're doing vibing and AI is creating all these code does not mean that you have to get away with your guardrails and stuff like that. Those become more important now, and I'm really excited to see, John, your team actually investing and sort of
Yeah,
into
yeah, yeah. I mean, they're more important than ever, right? And
Mhm.
that's why also we have Colonizer, right? So that it blends in with the Agentforce Vibes flow. So anything generated by AI is going to be sanity checked, right? And I mentioned earlier, right? So DevOps Center is now agentic, meaning that yes, you can use agents to operate DevOps Center. But beyond that, our hope is that we are going to be able to use agents to the point of assigning work items to an agent for execution, and the hood it's using exactly the same thing we have with Agentforce Vibes, right? And everything that it generates, yes, it goes through the same governance processes that we have today. So quality, ensuring that humans are in the loop and approving things, and so on and so on, right?
Awesome, awesome. This is a very interesting question, actually, and I think very fundamental from Gazala Sayada coming from LinkedIn. Where can we see how to install and try to use this Agentforce vibes in sandbox environment? Um, just trying to figure it out, whether it is an extension in the VS Code, whether this is its own tool. I know a lot of you would have got opportunity to explore this, but I think this is for you, Jeff, for all those of
Sure.
you beginners.
So you can get started today with Agentforce Vibe. So if you're in a sandbox, you can go in the upper right corner where the gear is at. It drops on that menu. You'll see Dev Console. I think it's right below or above Dev Console. It'll say Agentforce Vibes, and then you can connect to your org automatically, and you can start exploring there. Start with some small prompts to maybe investigate what a certain trigger is doing, or you can actually generate some more test cases. Where you can create an LWC to kind of test things out with a controller in the back end. There's a lot of different ways you can small prompts to get you started, but it's just go around and start using it. Just start playing with it and asking a question in the sandbox. That's probably the best way to get started. You can also, if you're using VS Code locally, you can install the extension as part of the Salesforce extension pack. So that'll be a part of the install if you have that, or you can go and actually find the Agentforce Vibes extension yourself on the marketplace in VS Code and install it that way. Simple to get up and running.
Awesome, awesome. And there is a related question here for you, Jeff. Will the developer orgs, like the new developer orgs, they come with vibes, or is it only available in SDOs?
It is. That's a kind of a work in progress right now. I think it is developing SDOs.
Mm-hmm.
There's some issues around IP restrictions on some things, and so that's one of the issues we are right now. Where it's currently available in production orgs, and we're getting ready to take that access away. So there's a lot of things in flight right now about where you get it. But I would say the best place to do it is in a sandbox, or just download it locally and use it there as a local machine. And you can also connect, if you're using the local VS Code installation, you can connect to Scratch orgs also. That's not available in the web-based version, but you can connect to next Scratch orgs with VS Code locally in your machine.
And Jeff, just to clarify, the sandbox, it doesn't have to be like a full copy sandbox. Even just a plain old developer sandbox will get you access to Agentforce Vibes IDE.
And let me just add one clarification: is that yes, regardless of whether you're accessing from Sandbox or Scratch or Agentforce Vibes, the moment you load it up, you can connect to anything, right? And this is important because in the world again of DevOps Center, if you're a release manager, you want to play around with our natural language mode of operating DevOps Center, right? You need to connect it to the hub, which is typically a production org, right? And that's okay, but you're under the hood just interacting with our DevOps Center APIs. Right? You're not necessarily deploying your changes directly to prod or anything like that, which is exactly what we want to avoid, right?
Right.
Yeah, John makes a great point. I mean, we're talking about Agentforce Vibes and the Vibes IDE. For folks who used to know the old name Code Builder, right? What you're really getting is this incredible web-based development tool. It has the CLI, it has all these extensions, and it's with zero setup. I mean, Jeff painted the perfect picture. You go to click the gear, hit Agentforce Vibes, and you're off and running. So, really, really good tool to have in your toolbox.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a question for you on DX MCP server. I know DX MCP server is one of at least my favorites because I use it all the time for different things. And Sally noticed that the Salesforce DX MCP server by default shows only 14 tools. Is this controllable by a setting? And I need to enable access to the rest of the available tools as well. Like, how do you go about this?
Well, if it's the same Sally, then yes, Jeff is right. She's asking all the best questions.
Yes.
Great question, Sally. The DXMCP server ships with over 60 tools. The thing is, not all of those tools are activated by default. If you think about MCP hosts, each tool that's active across all of the different MCP servers that are in use, those tools end up eating away at the context that the MCP host is working with. So we try to be restrictive, and we don't activate by default tools that you don't specify. So in whatever tool you're using, if it's Agentforce Vibes, there's a MCP configuration that you can get through the UX. If you're using Cursor or VS Code, it's usually something like mcp.json. Somewhere you have an MCP config file, and in that file you can actually specify in the startup parameters which tool sets do you want to use. So tool sets will enable groups of tools, or you can even enable individual tools by specifying there in the config. So those are the options, and that's why you're not seeing things. If you're talking about what's maybe turned on by default with Agentforce Vibes, again, it's that limited set, but you can definitely extend that. All of this information, like how to set these configuration files, it is in the documentation for the DXMCP server. So check that out.
Yeah, perfect.
Can I also pile on to Vivek's fantastic comments about that? So we know this is an issue with the build process because we've got all these great tools and these great rules to help you build metadata faster and easier with a better outcome. But the problem, like Vivek says, like when you start activating all these tools and all these rules, it's going to fill up the context window, and then you're going to run out of tokens much faster. So we're working on a feature. Do I have to say safe harbor? I say about future fortress statements, but we're working on a feature where we want to dynamically activate and deactivate rules and tools based upon the intent of what you're building. So if you say, I want to build an Apex controller that does this and this, we'll turn on the Apex rules and the Apex tools for you and turn the other ones off. So that has minimizes the context window and optimizes your use of the pro models, but it also gives you a better build process. So that's coming. We're working every day on this topic, this thing right here. And that's one of our priorities in the roadmap for TDX.
Awesome.
Yeah, let me just add something. So this topic of optimizing, token usage is also quite important for Colonizer 2, right? That's why our tool is currently in dev preview. Currently it's not optimized, so it will consume a lot of tokens if you let it, right? We want to move to mode. Coming back to what Jeff was saying, is that we only scan code for the particular problems that the user wants to prioritize, and he's working with the agent on it, right? And then based on the results it gets, the agent is also able to query specific parts of the colonizer results that it cares about and focus on those problems, right? So we're also trying to minimize the number of tokens there. That should be available early next year.
Yeah, this is awesome, right? Like context engineering, right? It is shared responsibility. Of course, as a developer, if you really understand, you can control a lot of things, but I'm really excited to see that the product team is actually baking some of these into the product itself. So that's really exciting. This is a question for you and probably for John as well. Like how Agentforce Vibes handles deprecated methods or API versions less than 30. Like let's say there is deprecation or something. How is the versioning done today for in general? Just try to understand, like if I ask it to generate let's say Apex class or Lightning Web Component? How is it figuring it out which versions it's supposed to generate to?
Yeah, that's another thing that we're working on actively every day,
Mhm.
because the model is what is generating the code. So on our own internal models, we can post-train the models with more Salesforce information. But on models like GPT-5, they're only trained on certain things. So if they were trained back when it was, an earlier version, they're going to actually develop code for that API's version. So we're at the mercy of the models in this case. However, you can always set up rules for your build. So that's what's going to give you a lot of controls. So you can set up rules that are for your entire organization or for your project. So if you have a global rule for your organization, it may be things like always use the latest version or version 60 of the API. It may be I always want to have 90% test code coverage. Always use these naming conventions. Those are ones that can apply globally to all of your builds. And then you may have project level rules that say, for this customer, we're using this version. They're on a pre-release version. Or I want to use flows for automation for project A. Project B, I want to use Apex for automation. So these rules are going to give you a much better build. And that's why one of the things we just said, we're dynamically enabling and disabling rules. We're trying to get the best build for what your intentions are. And this is a great way to do it, is with the rules.
And there's this really cool combination you can do, right? So you can have Agentforce Vibes rules, which are effectively things that you inject into the prompt under the hood, all of that stuff, right? And then you can have codealizer rules, which are deterministic, that will check for potentially even the same or slightly different set of bounds. So yes, you can check for API versions is a codealizer, but when codealizer runs, it will always detect those problems, assuming the input, the files that are being scanned are the same. So the AI will generate a class, right? Codealizer will automatically run through the MCP tool. It will check whether the API version is a certain one that you define in your say custom rules in Codealizer, right? Feed that back to the LLM, and then it can iterate again.
There's a lot of head nodding from me and Vivek because we're super excited about Code Analyzer. It's going to create the best code for your Salesforce experiences.
Right, and
definitely a big code analyzer fan here as well, but a big fan of rules too. And I just to share a little personal story. There's new Agentforce DX tools coming out in December that support a brand new language called AgentScript. Great way to build deterministic agents. Okay, I'll try not to cross plug more than that. But the reason why I bring that up is that AgentScript is a brand new language, and through the use of rules in Agentforce Vibes, we're actually able to help Agentforce Vibes know how to work with something that it wasn't even trained on. So there's so much power in these rules, and the fact that AFV Agentforce Vibes comes out of the box with all these great rules that Jeff and team have built, but also that you as a developer can add your own rules on a project basis, a system basis. Like it's a really maybe underestimated and underutilized part of a vibe coding system that everybody should really get their hands on.
Yeah, and I just want to call out that even here at Dev Advocacy, we are working on some content videos on how we enable our community, because this is all new. We completely understand this is a new paradigm of building applications, and we are here to again enable you. There is a question coming on the request per day limits that we have. Is there any plan to increase that in pro mode or anything around that? Right, I know that you have 50 requests with a core model, but a lot of are heavy users of these systems. So just wondering, Jeff, have you thought about it, or is there any roadmap around?
Have I thought about it? That's probably the only thing I ever think about nowadays is how do we get users more requests to build better Salesforce applications? That's literally what I think about. That's what we're talking about right now. We have talks. Well, first let me say, we're footing the bill for all this usage. It's a free tool. And so we can't give unlimited usage for these models that we're paying for. So there's got to be some tiered usage around this. But we want to enable you with more requests to actually build better applications. So there is a strategy around monetization where you can either, get more usage, or maybe we'll let you bring your own key. So you already have an Anthropic key or Open API key. Maybe you can bring that key on our gateway and our models. But those are coming talks every day. We have a weekly talk with upper management about how we enable this. So that's number one thing on our list for the roadmap is this providing more API calls and more usage for developers.
Got it. Perfect. So the next question that I have is: does Agentforce? I'm pretty sure this means vibes. Does Agentforce vibes log all changes and decisions for auditability? If so, where is it stored?
Man, this is a great question.
Yeah, this is for compliance.
Natively, it does not, but there's nothing that doesn't prevent you in the rules to say, before I start in the act mode, document everything that we've talked about in a markdown file and the implementation approach, and add that to my repo so I can version it. So there's no reason why you couldn't do that. It's a simple prompt or part of the rules to do that. I've done it the path before and it works fantastic. There is a new mode we have. It's called memory bank. And it's a series of prompts that you run, and it'll go through your code. It's going to eat up a lot of API calls, of course. It's going through all your files. So you have to use it with care. But it'll go through and it'll document everything your application is doing, all the changes you've made, and maybe give some high-level implementation details as well. But that's a feature we have right now as well. But I would highly recommend doing that from standpoint of it's a great way to figure out why you made certain decisions with the model and have that documented.
Got it. Yeah, rules are great. The next question is: where can we learn more about Vibe with DevOps? I think it's about the next generation in DevOps.
Sign up for the pilot, because that's the only way you're going to learn about it.
Yes.
For the next couple of months, I think. If you sign up for the pilot, we're going to give you access to it. We're going to give you a lot of documentation that will tell you how to use all the various MCP tools. So we have MCP tools to operate DevOps Center pretty much end to end for anything like checking out work items, so you can start working on it, to creating a review, to promoting it, all of that stuff. We also have some MCP tools to start to fix certain issues. Imagine there's a merge conflict. We have an MCP tool for merge conflict resolution. We'll soon have one for resolution of deployment issues. So we're trying to bring also this concept that agents can come in and actually help release managers unblock their pipelines and start to move things forward, right? So anyway, all of that stuff's going to be in our docs for pilot participants.
That was a softball question. Was that submitted by a Jay Bello?
Yeah. That question came. That's a great question. There is a related question actually. Speaking about things we need to fix with DevOps, is the rollback supported in this new DevOps pipeline? If yes, is it metadata only or full bundle rollback? And then there's a related question around how is this Agentforce Vibes different from the VS Code extension in terms of Apex refactoring and code generation?
I'll address the rollback.
Let's break that into two questions. Let's break that. First about DevOps pipeline. Like, is the rollback supported? Let's talk about that.
Let's just keep it very simple. We don't support rollback at Salesforce at the metadata layer. Right? We have the concept that if you are carrying out a metadata deploy, if there's an error, we don't commit that transaction to the database. So it's not about rolling that back. We don't commit it, right? And that's why we have these ALM processes, so that you can validate and verify things as much as you can before you actually deploy things to production, right? Now, this to say, we are always exploring ways to come close to this idea of rollback, right? Those discussions are continuing. If we are ever to leverage some of those capabilities, we will introduce them to DevOps Center. At this point in time, no, we do not have that, right? But we don't have that across any tool. And even third-party tools that might have this, they have a very specific scope, right? And they cannot apply in all scenarios, right? Because your production org is always being used. It's generating data all the time. Things are changing all the time, right? So a rollback is a pretty important operation that we would need to do very careful.
Perfect. And this is my favorite question as well. Thanks for asking, Abhishek. Is Salesforce planning on adding Sonnet 4.5 or other models that might be better than OpenAI for coding with Agentforce Vibes? How about models?
Yes.
Are we planning? Okay.
Yeah.
That was very short.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Do you have any like timelines or anything like that you're okay? But we're definitely looking into it.
Yes, definitely. That's probably the third thing on our list is other models as well. it goes along with being able to select your own model because, like, some people, some companies can't use a certain provider's models, or they won't for legal reasons, for whatever. So we have to be able to give them the option to use something else besides our open APIs models. So that's what we're working on right now. So, but it's much more complex than what you would think it would be. Just providing access to models. These models still have to go through our trust layer for a number of reasons that we have to keep your code secure. So that's something we have to enable as well.
Yeah, just want to remind everyone, right? I mean, it's enterprise. This is not coding and open source software. It's enterprise. We are an enterprise company, so we really have to look into all this from the security vision and governance perspective. So that's what makes this little challenging here. This is a very interesting question. I want everyone to actually chime in for this. What skills should new developers focus on to work effectively with Agentforce vibes and all these AI tools in Salesforce?
I'm so glad that you asked that. I saw that one pop through the feed, and I was hoping you'd bring it up. You've heard the word context a few times. Content. You may have heard in the past prompt engineering. Now it's context engineering, and it's having an understanding of how these LLMs are trying to work and how these tools work. That really only comes from a lot of experimentation. And so I think the first thing that I would recommend to anybody in any line of work, let alone software development, start using AI tools. I had my head in the sand probably a year thinking, oh, this will all go away. Well, my wife was using ChatGPT to help her be a better teacher. And then finally it takes a while to really get used to it. It's a different paradigm, different way of thinking and doing things, and really the more comfortable you are with generative AI tools in general, the more you're going to be able to apply kind of similar knowledge, similar lessons across whatever you're doing, including development. Other folks?
I have a point of view, which is it's never been more important to think about testing, right? But when testing in the big picture of you have some requirements that are ultimately translated into features. How do I come up with the right testing strategy to ensure that that app that I'm building, that solution I'm building, actually is functional, actually does not have any particular anti-patterns, it's performant, all that stuff. How do you create that testing strategy is going to be more important than ever. Because sometimes the LLM will not be able to create things that adhere to your requirements like 100%. And we know that. The best way to help it get there is with the right level of testing, right? As we start introducing more and more solutions that have been originally generated by AI or heavily generated by AI, your pipeline needs to be able to have that level of robust testing capabilities to ensure that quality is always present there.
I would say to think of the Agentforce as more of a development partner, someone you can leverage to take care of the toil, the scaffolding of things, the things you would normally hate doing in development process. I hate creating new objects and going through every single page and hitting the checkbox for all the fields and adding the page layouts. Try to think of it as a development coder that was on a model where they were actually doing a lot of this work for you, and you're thinking more of like a higher level, more of, I don't want to say architecture, but a higher level with the better understanding of the entire process. And a lot of times it's when you talk to the model, it's more of it's not like a, hey, do this. It's more of a spec driven development. I want to articulate what I want to build, and here's details about it. And so the model is grounded with that information that you have. You just can't throw wild prompts out and expect miracles. So if you can think about what you actually want to build, the better prompts you give, the better results you're going to get from that. So I would think more of a higher level and look at more spec-driven development.
Yeah, I love that. I love that actually. So it's all about basically your prompts are what you are thinking. So you see that's the paradigm shift here. And previously you had to think and then you have to code. Like your code to some extent is how how you are thinking through the logic, right? It's completely changed. Now it's like you think and you express that thinking through the prompts. So again, the human in the loop here is really important. And also AI is your partner, as Jeff was saying. It's your partner, both in terms of how you are thinking, because sometimes, and that's why we have two different modes. And I love to again expand on that: plan mode and act mode. You need to understand difference between them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, the plan mode is fantastic because you can actually, like, I had a problem where I was debugging a flow and a trigger, and I could ask the agent, what do you think I should do based on what you found is wrong with these two pieces
Right.
of metadata, and it'll come back and tell you, I found this, 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 and this, and then you can start asking, well, is the best approach to do A or is it to do B? What's the implementation of choosing option A? What'll that imply on my other classes? And it'll go out and actually start looking at your metadata and figure out what's going on there and what that'll impact. And then you can have a detailed a plan on what thinks is the best way. And then you can refine that plan. You can say, yeah, this looks great, but I want you to also run code scanner analyzer for this as well. I want you to also deploy this to a scratch org first. There's a lot of things you can do, go back and forth, but the key here is that the developer is always in the middle, always reviewing everything, always approving everything. And I think just but that plan mode is great where you can do that. Now, once you get into act mode, there's some guardrails there as well. You may have told the agent, I want you to do these 10 things, and it started doing the 11th thing. And you say, okay, it's going sideways. I need to stop this process. You can stop the whole build, and there's actually checkpoints. So you can roll back up in the conversation to a certain part of the whole process where it started doing some maybe refactoring that you didn't think was correct, and you can roll it back, and you roll back not only the code, but you can roll back the context of the agent itself, so it'll have no knowledge of what it had done going forward. And you can, of course, not at this point, give it more instructions to do something specifically that you want it to do. So there's a number of guardrails we have in place, both in plan and act mode.
Yep. That's awesome. The next question that we have is around this bit of a licensing question, but I still want to bring it up so that everyone is clear on this. This is a very lengthy question. I don't want to read through it, but I'll convey the gist here for you, Ray. So they're trying to understand, these 50 requests that they have. Does it overlap with the requests that they get for a Agentforce product itself? Is there any connection between Agentforce product and Agentforce vibes? Quote are the requests that they gave. We just want to clarify that, I guess, Jeff.
Yeah, that's a great question. We were really good about this product where we just named it the same as everything else. So we thought we would name everything Agentforce to make it clear to everybody of everything. But no, there's no connection at all with Agentforce or Data Cloud. You don't have to have Agentforce or Data Cloud to use Agentforce vibes. They're completely independent.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, so with that, let's move on. So we talked about the models. I think that's a frequently asked questions. There is a question around, does Agentforce Vibe modify actual org data, or only it works with metadata? I just want to.
I think that they can answer that more. It sounds like more like an MCP tool.
Yeah, that's a MCP question.
Yeah, so you can vibe code your way to modifying org data, because it's possible either through MCP tools or through the CLI to run SQL queries, DML, et cetera. You can you can import records into Salesforce. So that's how you would change the data through importing records. And so I would say that if data modification is something that's important to you, for example, if you want to automate the standing up of a scratch org, which is going to include a metadata deploy, and it likely include like a data tree import, then yes, Agentforce vibes can help with that, and some of it, like I said, through DX MCP tools, and some through CLI commands. There's also a set of platform hosted MCP servers that are available, and I think a lot more of the data ingress and egress functionality is going to be handled through the platform MCP tools that Salesforce is putting out, and so there will be lots of options for changing both metadata and data through vibe coding.
Perfect. There's a couple of questions around security that I think we can merge and tackle it. It's just that some developers are trying to understand, like, how does security and data privacy and all these things are getting handled, specifically when we connect with third-party models like GPT-5.
Yeah, I can kind of talk on that. So all the models go through our trust layer. So we don't actually maintain any of the code or any of the context or any of your org's information in the model itself. Once that's transmitted to the model as part of the context window and the results come back to the Agentforce vibes, the model forgets everything that it was given. So we don't use your information, your data, your code for training on any of models. So there is quite a bit of guardrails inside of the trust layer. So, we have dynamic grounding. We mask all your PI data. We look for prompts and defend against bad prompts. There's toxicity detection. Everything's logged through there as an audit trail. So there's a lot of things that this trust layer gives you for privacy and security. And that's one of the key features of Agentforce Vibes is that, this is enterprise development. We want to make sure that you have the privacy and the trust that we're doing the correct thing, and we did that with the trust layer.
And just to build on what Jeff is saying, because I had lots of conversations at Dreamforce with folks, at the Agentforce Vibes demo booth. They said, "Hey, I've already got OpenAI access for my company. We use Anthropic. Why should I use, or why should the Agentforce trust layer matter?" I think what some people don't realize is that we have negotiated with all of these, large language model providers so that they don't retain things as well. And so when you're using models through the Agentforce trust layer, you're getting access to Salesforce's negotiation with them, so that your data is not retained on their servers, on our servers. So there's a lot of advantages to using a model through Agentforce as opposed to just using the same exact model directly yourself.
Awesome. And this is a very interesting question coming from Vladimir. So the question is around, I will summarize it because it was very, very lengthy again. So the question is around, do we imagine that there should be a certain template language, where specification can be filled by business analysts, and then they pass on to tools like Agentforce Vibe, via Jira or other source control system, that can lead to like automatic and reliable coding, creation of these metadata, all of these, like basically, I think the goal here is standardization of, I guess, the request that needs to get into, or the prompt that needs to go into Agentforce Vibes. And I think this is very interesting.
I don't think there's anything that would prevent a company from coming up with a standard way to express what they want to, what the intent is of their build. I've seen people do that before. They've actually had rules and prompts set up that they always want to use a specific testing framework, or they want to, prevent DML injection or SOAP injection, something like that. So there's a reason why you couldn't have a standard way to do it, to set up this maybe a documentation standard for your prompts. And I think that goes back to what Vivek saying, you can use this model to train itself. So there's no reason why you couldn't give it a couple of these examples and say, this is how I want all of my my prompts to be built, and here's what each one of these sections means. There's no reason why you couldn't do something like that. Do you concur, Vivek?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this question hits on one of the things that Jeff and I have been talking about. Again, this is safe harbor. Imagine if these skills and workflows and things like that, or rules and workflows, if those could be wrapped up as abilities, or skills, or something that could follow you regardless of which surface you're using Agentforce Vibes, and whether it's in the IDE or and eventually the Vibe CLI, or even something that the DevOps Center might use, to connect, use agentic services to get something done. And if we can consolidate all of those, those abilities, and give you the the chance to not only use the best of the abilities that we've defined, but also fine tune them for yourself and have it appear across each surface. That's kind of the goal that we're trying to drive for. You know, and the early version of all that is are these rules. You know, so think about, you know, using rules, customizing rules. That is absolutely something that you should be doing, whether you're using Agentforce Vibes or Cursor or any other agentic tool. All of them have this kind of rules capability, and so it should be part of how you think about using these tools to want to customize, you know, the how they work for you.
Perfect. I have a very interesting question actually, and probably we might be able to take one more, and that's it. And we'll might have to come offline for other questions. So this is a question from Michael. He says, and he's sharing his experience working with Vibes actually. So for flows, I have found Agentforce Vibes to be excellent at analyzing, but really not good at writing them from scratch. For example, he used a simple prompt this morning to create an auto launch flow. And really the challenge here was essentially it had all the syntax and XML markups incorrect. However, after providing example, which definitely is what we call few shot prompting, it started to syntactically correct those auto launch flows. It fixed those errors, and I got really some productivity boost. But really, it required some diligent prompting. Um, but it was not as much as unlock as automating Apex or LWC or other metadata. So there is any other tips for one-shotting um, prompts for these kind of use cases? Yeah,
Can I-
Jack, yeah.
I'm so glad someone asked this question. Well, because one of the biggest things I hear people is like, oh, how does it know my org? How does it know what to create successfully? And anybody who's used Agentforce Vibes knows that sometimes the model, since it's non-deterministic, will have successful times it builds metadata and sometimes unsuccessful times it does. And that can vary depending on, you know, the order of your words in your prompt. So we've been working on, there's a new beta MCP tool. I think it's called Get Metadata Schema tool.
Mhm.
And what you can do is you can ask the model to go to use that tool and to get the metadata description about that metadata type. So you may say, I'm building a custom object, and the Agentforce Vibes will use that tool to go out and grab the schema about the custom object, bring it back, and then it'll use that to actually build the metadata itself. So I have a demo that I run all the time called the asset tracker. It builds a custom object, an LWC, a permission set, a flexi page, some tabs. And typically with GPT-5, it will generate maybe 75% of the code correctly on the first try.
Mhm.
Using this MCP tool, it's 100% of the time correctly.
There you go. So MCP, what I'm hearing is, you know, MCPs are going to be that unlock, because that is where you can control, you can program things up, and you can be deterministic to some extent. So as soon as the large language model sort of figures it out, this is the MCP, and it delegates the responsibility to the MCP. MCP is going to correct things that model couldn't get it right. I think it will be a cycle, right? It will learn about this, we'll create these MCPs, and it will be an cycle that will keep on, and things are going to get better and better.
Yeah, the tool is beta right now. We're just making some tweaks to it to make it more performant. Like right now, you have to pass just one metadata type at a time. I want to be able to pass a collection of metadata types and get all back at one time to prevent multiple tool calls. So that's coming. It's in beta. Hopefully in the near future, we can have some now, because that's one of the main requests we get is like, it doesn't create all the metadata correctly every single time. And so we were trying to provide better routes to do that.
Can I just add a little philosophical bit here, though, about one shot or zero shot getting stuff done. I know that people seem to love that, and they make great demos. You know, I gave one prompt and an app appears. You know, but the reality is, and for anyone who's newer to using these AI tools, you know, I don't want folks to like try a one shot or zero shot prompt and then not get what they want and then walk away thinking, it doesn't work. My most effective experiences with AI have always been a partnership. It's always been a dialogue, you know, and so I found when I changed my own expectations away from zero-shot perfection to this AI and I are going to work together to achieve something, and we're going to do it a little piece at a time. It helped me get to better outcomes. And so, not saying that if we get to zero-shot perfection, that's awesome. That's a goal. But as you are trying to work with these tools, maybe a different mindset can help you be more effective. That's just my kind of philosophical.
And this is a good reason why you should always have Vivek go first, because he's got much better responses than anybody else does. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. I think we are, almost ending our time. I wish we could go on and on, but we have limited time, as you know, all of you. So I just want to take a moment and thank everyone for joining us and getting all your questions. Now, for the questions that we couldn't come back to you, post it on the Trailblazer community, and we'll definitely get back to you via that. And with that, I just want to remind everyone that there are more upcoming Agentforce Now events, like hands-on workshops, code lives, ask me anything. There's one happening next month too on Agent Script. And Vivek, we are not going to leave you so soon. We're going to have you again because your team is doing some really awesome stuff along with.
Very excited about that one.
Yep. And again, thank you to John and Jeff as well for joining. John, I know we couldn't get a lot of questions to you. But I'm pretty sure the work
send them across.
Yeah, but there are questions. There are definitely questions on the next generation DevOps Center. I'm really excited about the work that your team is doing with both, the security tools that you have, the scanner, the CLI scanner, and all these tools are going to be fundamental. So really excited about that. With that, again, join our developer community. And thank you again, everyone. Thank you again. And we will hope to see you on the next one. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.